Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you uh, for joining today's class. And in today's class, we are going to talk about arrays, loops, um, and we're also going to look into objects in JavaScript. So, in the past week, or yeah, apart from the revision, before the revision week, which was last week, we talked mainly about primitive data types. And we looked at strings, we looked at numbers, we looked at Boolean, and we also looked into how if and else statements work. Okay. Um, and then we also talked about some other data types. Um, so for today, we are going to look into the array and the object data types. Of course, we already know that those two are under the reference data types. And then we're also going to look at loops. So we look at how for loop is being written, while loop is being written, um, do while loop is being written. So these are like the basic loops we have in JavaScript. Okay, so I'll start with a little bit of definitions to each of these terms because it's not everybody that knows about or has heard about these things or is familiar with it, right? So I'll start with arrays, right? Arrays are lists basically, right? And an arrays are zero index. Now, when we say arrays are zero index, what we are simply saying is the first value in the array starts has the index of zero, right? So it's what is the index of an array you use to access an array. Okay, so if you have five objects or five elements or items in an array, the first one has an index of zero, the second one has an index of one, and so on and so forth, right? Um, the array is being or the index of the array is being managed by um, by JavaScript itself. So when you remove from an array, add to an array, JavaScript automatically, gives it the um gives it its index. Okay. While objects are different, so objects rely on the key and the value you give them. You don't just push values to objects. If you want to create a value in an object, um you need to give a key and a value to that particular object, right? Or to that particular property in an object. So we'll see how all these terms, play out when we start writing the code. Also, I'll talk about loops, right? So a loop is just a repetition of an action. So if you're repeating an action multiple times, you're actually looping, right? So each time you take an action, right, in a loop, you're actually iterating through that action. So if you say you're going to do something five times, it means that thing is going to have five iterations. So when I say, oh, in the first iteration, this happened, just know that's one out of the number of times, or the first out of the number of times that that particular loop is supposed to run. Okay, right. So that's how it basically works, right? Um, so we have arrays in JavaScript, array method, we have JavaScript objects, we have for, while, and do while. All right, so um, I've been able to at least explain some of this, and let's actually move into writing code, for to see how this works, right? So we look at JavaScript arrays, array methods, JavaScript objects, and then for while and do while loop. We are going to look into all of that. So let me reshare my screen. Let's go to our coding area, which is VS Code, and then we'll start writing code already. Um, before we go there, let me just, talk a little bit about why you need an array, right? And why you need an object. For people that are totally new to it, the reason you need an array is because you want, most times, you want to get a list of things. Okay, for example, a list of users, right? You want to get a list of users or a list of posts, right? Okay, let's take, for example, an app like WhatsApp, for example. The list of messages you have there is an array of objects. The object contains the message, who sent it, the time that it was sent, and the rest. So that's where you would want to use an array, If you're creating something like a to-do list, you know, that is where you want to use an array to hold the list. Hello, can you all hear me? Can you all still hear me? Okay. So let's continue. I don't know if you guys can see my screen. Can you see my screen? Can anybody see my screen? Just indicate on the chat that yes, you can see my screen. So I'll be sure my screen is showing up at your ends. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Um, so I was talking about why you need something like an array, right? Um, so you need an array to keep things like a list of something, maybe a list of task, a list of string and all those stuff. And mainly, you use an array to show a table. Maybe if you want to render a table on your front end, or you want to render something, maybe you want to render maybe a grid, or anything that has to do with a list, right? You'd want to use an array to hold it. Um, those arrays could contain objects, right? And we'll see how objects work. Then to actually work with an array, you have to look through the array. So you have to, if you have a list of users, if you and you want to show that that list of users to maybe or let's say you want to show a list of users on your interface, like let's say if you're doing front end, you would want to write a loop to look through those users to or the objects in the array to show it or to do something with it. Okay, so let's already start coding. Uh, let's come here. I believe you guys can see my VS Code currently. Can you guys see it? Hope people can see my VS Code. You can indicate. Okay. I refuse to believe it's only Daniela that is in this class. She's only the person answering. Okay. All right. More people have answered. Fine. That's okay. So we want to look at the arrays, right? So this is how you'd write an array in JavaScript if you didn't know. You write it like this. Of course, you can assign it to a variable. Let's say names of people in class equals to, you use a square bracket and a semicolon. Then after that, you write maybe the names of people in class. So I know that we have divine, we have um we do, yep, um yeah, we have Daniela, we have Ezekiel. Sorry about the mistake in the spelling. Ezekiel, we have uh Dim Dim Chris. Change your name to your real name. What's your real name? Can't use Dim Chris. What's your real name? Put up your real name. That's what I can use. Okay, yeah, Chris so far. Now, right? Um, of course, you guys should, or all of you should, make sure your real name is your Zoom name, right? Don't use uh usernames or something. Use your real names as your Zoom username, right? Thank you. All right. So let's continue. So I know you guys are more than this in class. I can't write everybody's name, right? But I'm just choosing a few, right? Samples. Uh, this is actually an array. So um, although if you check this, let me delete this part. If you say console.log um type of name of people in class. If you do that and you run this code, node it.js, if you run that code, um, why is it taking time? Yeah, you'd see that it gives you an object. I know you would have loved it to have shown an array instead of an object, right? But arrays are also objects in JavaScript, and one of the reasons for that is because an array has a key and a value, and the key is the index, while the value is whatever you put here, right? And it's the same thing as objects. Objects have keys and values, but the difference between objects and arrays is that objects have named value, so it doesn't use indexes, right? It uses actual names to keep its index. Right. Um, so we have this list, right? And of course, remember that I said that they are indexed, like each person is or each value here is indexed, right? Of course, if you print it out this way, you see everything like this, right? If I wanted to access the first value in this array, I'd say class at the index of 0, right? Names of people in class at the index of 0. That's going to give me divine because okay. Um, Sorry about that. I'm back. Um, Network is quite unstable at my end. Sorry about that. I'm sorry about that. Um, let's continue, right? So we have that, and there are things you can. All right. Sorry about that, please. My network is not stable. I'm sorry about this. I hope you guys can see my screen. I'm sorry. My network isn't stable today, but we still move against all odds. Um, right. So we have that this line console logs out the list of people before um before we add a value. Okay. So if we now say the array dot push, right? Push is one of the methods. Or before I go into push, let's look at the property of an array. So now if I want to know the number of elements that are inside this array, I'll just say I'll comment that I'll say names of people in class dot length. So if I do that and I run this code, you see that we have the answer to be 5, right? We have the answer to be 5. Um, we have the answer to be 5. Okay, sorry about that. So let's see. If I said number of names of people in class dot push and I say Mr. Bethel. Okay, um, sorry about that, please. Let's continue. Let's continue. All right. So now if I do something like this, I say names of people in class, and of course I copy this and paste it here again. And maybe we would say before, and here we would say after, right? We can now say, we can clear this and then come back to run our code, okay? And if we run it now, we would see that um uh, this is quite strange. Why is my node running slowly for this? It's supposed to be instant. Okay, so sorry about that. Right now, if we do this, we see that we have that before we didn't have Mr. Bethel inside that array, but after we have that we've removed him. Oh, sorry, we've added him. Now, note we added him to the end of the array. So push is used to add to the end of an array, right? If you want to add to the end of an array, use push. That's one method. Um, so gifts, you're saying yours is showing error. The error you're actually facing might be as a result of the fact that you're running the wrong you're running the wrong command, right? It's not node.array.js. If you want to run um if you want to run a node file, it is node then space then the name of the file and the extension. So it's supposed to be node space array.js if you have an array.js file, not node.array.js. Okay, I hope you understand. So if we have this, for example, so take note of the push. It's one of the array functions. We also have pop, right? So push first is push adds to the beginning of an array, right? Pop removes from the, sorry, did I say the beginning? From the end of the array. Push adds to the end of the array, right? pop removes from the end of an array. Okay, so if we say now pop doesn't accept any argument because it's just going to go to the last element and remove it. Okay, so if I just said pop like that, and I come and clear our console and run the code again, you would notice that what is happening here is it's actually uh, is actually removing from the end of the array. If you notice, it's it removed Christopher because Christopher was what we had, was the name we had at the end of the array. So we just remove the name Christopher from the array. Okay. I don't know who is actually drawing on my screen. I don't know who is drawing on my screen. Please don't draw on my screen. All right. Thank you. Uh, okay. Thank you. That would be also now. After you pop, of course, and you can pop a couple of times. I can decide to pop 3 times, and it's going to remove 3 names before I console or log what I want. Okay. So if I do this, you see that it removed 3 names: Christopher, Ezekiel, and Daniela because I popped 3 times. Of course, you can push 3 times also as much as you want. Okay, Happy Amarachi, you're asking if it is not it.js you're using to run the command. Now, this, yes, and that command depends on the name of my file. Look at my file here. The name of the file is it.js, right? This is the file I'm writing my code into. And of course, that is the file I'm going to run. So that's why so I don't know if maybe I should change the name to something more descriptive. I'd say array, arrays and objects, right? So if I'm here, I would say node arrays and objects. So for people that are wondering how I didn't type that actually. I just press my tab button, my key, no, like I just wrote arrays and then I press tab so it will complete it. So if I run it now, it still gives me the same result. It pops out 3. So you can now, of course, you should know that pop removes from the end of an array, while push adds to the end of an array. And of course, you can do the same thing to the beginning of an array, right? So if you want to add to the beginning of an array, you would use, I think it's on shift. No, sorry, shift. If I'm, okay, sorry, on shift. Yeah. So on shifts removes, or sorry, adds to the beginning of an array or insert a new to the start or the beginning of an array and it returns the new length of the array. Yeah. So let's see. If I wanted to add, let me see, maybe Happy Amarachi. I'll just say Happy Amarachi. I want to add it to the beginning of this array. So before divine, it will add Happy Amarachi. I would use, I would say the name of the array, which is names of people, dot on shift, Happy Amarachi. And once I do that and I clear here and come and run it, you'd see that we have Happy Amarachi at the beginning before divine now, right? I can add like 3 names before logging it out, and you see that the 3 names will add before divine. And we can also remove from the beginning of an array. Um, yeah. So Zoom user is asking, is there a way to remove 3 items without console? No, you don't have to console.log 3 times. Like the console.log is just to print out the result, right? But if you're talking of removing without writing pop, maybe 3 times. Yes, there's a way to remove it. So there is a method named splice. So splice can be used to remove multiple values in an array. We will see how it actually works. We are getting to that, right? We are getting to that. So if now, of course, on shift is used to add to the beginning. If I now say I want to remove divine, which is the first value here, I would say names of people in class dot shift, right? So shift is going to remove from the beginning. So if I clear here and then run it, you'd see that before we had divine in the array, but after divine is being removed from the array and we are left with Udo, Daniela, Ezekiel, and Christopher. Okay. Right. And then there are still other methods, right? There are still other methods you can use on this. Um, okay. Zoom, Zoom user, can you change your name to your original name, right? Can you change it? Change it to your real name, not Zoom user, please. Do that. Thank you. Um, so then we have others, right? Um, we have reverse. Reverse is used to, as the name uh implies, reverse an array. So Zoom user, yeah, I know, like you just told me your name here. Don't just tell me your name, like change it from Zoom, right? So it would not show Zoom user as your name while you're dropping messages. It will show it as the name you put down, right? So we have reverse. So if I want to reverse this array so that Christopher will be the first value, Ezekiel will be the second value, I could say dot reverse. So if I say dot reverse and let me clear my console and then run the command again. You see that, of course, before Divine was the first, Christopher was the last, but now since we are reversing, Christopher becomes the first and Divine becomes the last. Okay. Um, and so on. Then we also have splice. So we have splice. Now, splice can be used to add and remove, right? So let's even see. If you now another way to actually learn about how most of these methods work is when once you hover on them, there's always a small description, you know, um, on it. So it removes elements from the array. If necessary, inserts new elements to their place. It tells you the start, where you want to start, the delete count, and an array containing the elements that's okay, sorry. And okay, returns the elements that were deleted and the rest. Okay, so let's see. The first thing is um now you can use splice to remove or add in between your array. So if you don't want to add from the beginning or from the end, you can use splice. So for example, let's say I want to remove Udo from this array, right? I would say um names of people in class, which is the array dot splice, and I'll say I want to start at the index of 1. So 1 is Udo, right? 0 is divine. The index of 0 is divine. The index of 1 is Udo. I'll say I want to delete 1, right? So this 1 here means, yeah, I want to remove one person. I want to remove um one value, and that value is the value at the index of 1. Okay, this first value is where you want to start. I want to start from the index of 1. How many values do I want to remove? I want to remove only one value, right? So let's save that and let's see the result. right? So you see that now Splice has removed Udo. So because Udo was in the index of 1, and then we said we are only removing one value. That's why it removed Udo. Now, what if we said 1 and 2, right? 1 and 2 will remove Udo and Daniela because we are saying we want to start at the index of 1, and the index of 1 is where the name Udo is. Then we want to remove 2. So it will remove Udo and it also remove Daniela. So let's see. Let me rerun the code. Okay, now you see that it removed Udo and Daniela, and then we have Ezekiel and Christopher after divine, right? So it removes those. Okay. Um Now, what if we wanted to insert? Okay, now you can also use splice to replace. So, for example, remember when I did this and I said that it removes. So now it has removed Udo. What if you wanted to remove Udo and replace it with another name? Like, let's say, for example, I want to remove Udo and I want to replace it with the name um Godwin, for example. I would say first, I want to start from the index of 1. I want to remove one element, and then I want to insert uh I want to insert Godwin there. Let's see. Okay, no, I don't want to insert an array. So sorry. Yeah. What you're seeing, let me clear it and run it. So once. Okay. So now you see that what we've done so far now. Now the third argument to the splice is going to have the value you want to add. Okay. So what I've said here in splice is first I want to remove starting from the index of 1. I want to remove only one element, which is the element, of course, at the index of 1. But then I want to insert a new element in the same index of 1, and that element is Godwin. Okay, so that's why it's replacing Udo with Godwin. Now let me see if I can add more. Let's say Godwin Bright, right? Let me see if that will work. Yeah, so you can add if you want to add like 5 people at the same time. Maybe you want to remove Udo and maybe add Godwin, Bright, and other names. You just continue. Maybe Amarachi. Who else is in on the course of uh Emeka and Triumph? So I'd say we want to add Emeka and Triumph. So I'd say Amarachi, Emeka, Triumph. I'll first clear this and then let's see. So we removed Udo from the list and then we added all these other people before Ezekiel and before Daniela, Ezekiel, and Christopher. Um, so Bright, you're asking, must it be in order? What if I switch it up? If you switch it up, it will not work. It must be in order. This first value is the value you want to, or I did the position. Second one is where your how many you want to delete. If you don't want to delete, you just say 0, right? For example, if I don't want to remove Udo, but I just want to add these other people, I'll say at the position of 1, I don't want to delete anybody, so I'll put 0 there. Then I'll now put these other names that I want to add. So if I clear this and come back here, you'd see that um we have that. Now, what is happening is since you did not remove Udo, It is adding Godwin, Bright, Amarachi, Emeka, and Triumph. Starting from the index of 1. So Udo is now shifted to the index after Triumph. So after it has added all these things, then Udo and other people now come after. Okay. So if you switch it up, it is not going to work. So let's see now. It might even show an error. Let's just see. And I say 0, right? This is not Python. This is not Python. So it's taking it that what Divine, Bright, Amarachi, Emeka. It doesn't even understand what I wrote here. So it's adding after, okay, after Triumph, it's adding 0 before Daniela. So don't switch it up. You would have very funny results actually. Okay. This is not Python that you can say something like position is equals to 1. Then you now come and say maybe something like maybe values is equals to this, and then you now come back and now you can't do that in JavaScript when you're calling a function. You cannot use positional arguments. This is called positional arguments in Python. If you write Python or something, this is even wrong self. But um, my point is that it has to be in order for it to work well. It has to be in order. Okay. Mm, you also have join as a function, right? So you have join as a function. Now, join is used um, to combine the values of your array into a single string by a particular separator. So for example, if I say something like names of people in class, okay, okay, I'll say um names of people in class dot join, because we are converting it from a reference type a um to a primitive data type. So remember that array is a reference type. We are converting it to a primitive data type, which is a string. So if we do it outside here, we will need to save it in an array and log out that array. Okay. So if I said names of people in class dot join, and I say join by space, for example, the result will be this. The result will be uh Divine, Udo, Daniela. Like this is a string. Okay. If I say it should join all of them by dash, that's a hyphen, it will join all of them with that dash as you've seen here. Okay. And so on and so forth. It will do that. Okay. If you did not even pass any argument, I think it will join them without any space. Okay, it will join them by comma. Sorry. So comma here, comma is the default. If you don't specify any value, any join value, it will join it by comma. Or if you specify, maybe if you specify an empty string, that's when it will join everything together. Join everything together. Okay. I've heard you gift, right? I've heard you. I'll do so. But if we did this, right, and then we come back here, before and after will be the same, because you're not working with the reference data type and just modifying the reference data type. You're converting the reference data type back to a primitive data type. That is why it's still it's still showing now. So names of people is still going to be original, but this, my friend, if you want to log it out, right, you have to uh assign it a variable. Maybe you'd say um maybe names of people in class to string equals to that, and then of course you'll be logging out names of people in class to string. So see that it now prints out this no, so join is going to return a string, right? Join doesn't modify the array directly. It's so under the hood, what is happening is join copies this array, right? Deep copies this array. So there's this thing called deep copying and shallow copying, but it copies this array and then it does the modification and returns the string, right? It doesn't modify the array directly. That's why names of people in class is still intact, right? But if you notice pop and push, shift on shift, and the rest, all of them actually modified the array. Okay. Okay. I believe my voice is more audible now, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I hope it is more audible now. Hmm. Okay. How about now? How about now? Okay. That's strange. Okay, so probably it's not from my end. Probably it's not from my end. Uh, so okay. Someone is saying the volume is louder on phone but lower on PC. Yeah, so if you're using a Windows PC, there is this place you go to increase the volume. Let's see. These are your settings. Is it clear now? Is it clear? Is it clear? Okay. Okay. So let's see. PC is reducing the volume. Shall we just continue? Um, so names of people in class. This is okay. Um, Now let's see how we can actually loop through this object. I don't want to use map yet. I don't want to use map, but let's see how we can loop through this object. Okay. We have this object and then we want to loop through it. Okay. So we could say for now, this is how you write. I want to write a for loop, right? I'll say for let I equals to 0. Now, I is the number of iterations. This I here keeps the. I think the reason why it's even named, people popularly use I is that it should mean iteration, right? Or it means iteration. So I is equals to 0. I should be less than. I want to look through this array. So I should be less than names of people in class dot length. You see where the length property comes in. So then we now say I plus plus. And I'll explain what I just wrote for people that don't understand what is going on. Then I'll say console.log names of people in class at the index of I. Okay, now let me explain. Let me run this code first before I try to explain for you guys to see its results. So it prints Divine, Udo, Daniela, Ezekiel, and Christopher. Now, um, this part of the code is where I usually like calling the stats. So this is where it will start at the index of 0 or the iteration of 0, right? So, and you can, of course, we are um we are going to increase this iteration, or we are going to increase the value of I by 1 per each iteration. So this I plus plus here is saying increase by 1 per iteration, right? So this is your start. This part is your stop. The stop is like what is this part is always a condition. It's a condition that will check. if this condition is true, the loop will keep running, and the loop only stops when this condition becomes false. Okay, the loop stops only when this condition becomes false. There are also other ways to stop a loop. Okay, there are other ways to stop a loop, but we'll look into that later on. Then we now have the I plus plus. This part I like calling the step. So we have start, we have the stop, and then we have the step. Okay, or you can say, you can have the start, you can have the condition, and you can have the step. So you start from here, you take several steps until you meet the stop, right? And this stop here is stating that this condition has to be false for this loop to stop running. Okay, so this is start, stop, step. And let me explain how this function works. Let me explain it in bits. We're starting with the index of 0, right? Uh, when this function is being executed, right, it checks is now the value of I is 0. Is 0 less than names of people dot length? Remember that the number of the or the length of these names of people in class is 5. So we are checking, is 5, is 0 less than 5? It's true that 0 is less than 5. So we log out this, right? Now what we are saying is we want to log out names of people in class, but we want to log out at the index of I. And remember that I has the index of 0. So since we are saying names of people in class at the index of 0, it's going to log out divine first. Then we now do I plus plus. I plus plus is now going to change the value of I here from being 0 to being 1. Then the condition will now check again. Is 1 less than names of people in class dot length? So now is 1 less than 5? If it's true that 1 is less than 5, we now do this again, right? And then logging this out, will now log out names of people in class at the index of 1. And the index of 1 here is Udo. Okay, once it logs out Udo, it now adds 1 to the value. So that value now becomes 2. We are now checking, is 2 less than the names of people in class dot length? Yes, the names of people in class dot length is 5. Since that is true, we do this again, right? So it will now print names of people in class and the index of 2. The index of 2 is Daniela. And then after it prints the index of 2, it adds 1 to the value, and this I becomes 3. So it keeps doing that repeatedly until the value of I becomes 5. So Zoom user, change your name. Change your name. I won't answer your question, so you change your name from Zoom user to your real name. So this only stops running. Now let me take you to the last iteration, right? So let's say, for example, it finished running, and then the index of I is 4, and then we now add 1, right? We now add 1 to the value of 4, and 4 now becomes, or the value of I now becomes 5, right? So when the value of I becomes 5, we now check, is 5 less than 5? Is 5 is not less than 5, right? So since 5 is not less than 5, this will evaluate to becoming a false. And since this evaluates to becoming a false, this code will not run, and then the for loop is not going to continue. Okay, so that's how the for loop actually works. If I wanted to If I wanted to, let's say, just log out 1 to 5, I would say, or let's say 1 to 10, I'll say where I is less than 10, then I'll just log out I here. So I'll just say I, okay. So if we do that and then we come back here, yeah. So look at something, right? It brings out 1 to 9, right? Um, so let's rephrase what I said, right? So the first thing is it adds 1. It first adds 1 to I before it checks the condition. That's why it's starting from 1. Okay. So let's see. Let me see. Let me change this to plus I. Let me just test to see if okay, still no change. Um so if I did this, if I said minus one, let's see. Oh, okay. That's actually an infinite loop, sorry. Okay, wait though. I think I was the one that made the mistake. I didn't say I plus plus again. Okay, still 1 to 9. Okay, basically, right? Uh, it's still loading from 1 to 9. Anyways, let's just continue, right? So if we wanted to print from 1 to 10, we would say where I is less than or equal to 10. So it's going to print 1 to 10. Okay. So if you say if it's less than or equal to, that is when it will print 1 to 10. Okay. Um, so if the simple thing, if you wanted it to print from, okay, sorry, it actually prints from 0, please. Sorry, it actually printed from 0. It's my terminal that was, so let me take this back, sorry. Let me take this back. It starts printing from 0. I'm sorry, it was my terminal that was, you know, low, like it was, I think it was like this. So that is why it was only showing 1 to 10. So let me increase my terminal, okay? Um, and then let me run the code again. So of course it shows 0 to 9. If you wanted to show 1 to 10, you could simply do I plus plus, right? Oh, okay, sorry, not I plus plus, sorry. If you want it to be 1 to 10, you would simply start from 1, not from 0. And you end at you end at when I is less than 11 or I is less than or equals to 10. Okay. So that now prints 1 to 10. Okay. So wait, I think some of you might actually be confused because I gave two explanations, right? I gave two explanations. Um, Actually, what happens is that the condition is being checked before the addition. So if you put 0 here, it's actually going to start from 0. Okay. I just want to make that clear. It's not going to start from 1. It's going to start from 0. Okay. Um, so if I save that clear, and then come back to run it, you see that it actually starts from 0 down to 10. And the reason it's putting 10 is because I said if it is less than or equal to, okay, that's why. But if it was just less than, it wouldn't be showing 10. So just show till 9. Okay. Is there anybody that's not following? Anybody that is not following? Anybody confused? So let's continue. Let's continue. Let's continue. Um, let's look at the let's look at while loop, right? Now, the same thing you can do with for, you can do with while, but there are some scenarios where while fits more than a for loop. Now, a while loop, oh sorry, a for loop has a definite end, right? Nice. A while loop also can have a definite end, but you can also make it that a while loop only ends by a particular condition, if a condition is either, or if a condition resolves to false, right? So it doesn't check the number of times it's supposed to go. Okay. So let's see how we can even do that. Okay. Silas, your question, he said, what if it equals to 1? What would happen? Um, if it equals 1, I think what you mean is this. If it equals to 1, it is going to definitely start from 1 to log out down to 9. Okay, but and if you used that if you used this method to log out your array, it will start from Udo to log down. It will not start from divine to log down. So which means there's always going to be the very first person missing in that list. Okay, okay. So if now this this is kind of still useful if you wanted to do something like, let's say for example, um names of winners winners and runner ups. I'll be runners up, right? So if you had like, if this was a list of winners and runners up, and then of course maybe the first value is the value for the winner, then the other values, um okay, so Silas, you're asking, but why not return objects and not number? Yeah, I did the example where I returned objects. I returned the this string. We are going to go into the one where an object will be returned, but it's step by step. So I could do something like maybe I'd say something like console.log names of winners and runner up at the value of 0. Then I'll do something like this. Is is the winner. Then here now, I can now say something like this. I can now say names of winners. Okay, sorry, names of winners and runners up. At I could say this is runner up number. So then I could put here I, right? Now with this logic, what would happen is it would declare Divine as the winner, and then Udo as the runner up 1, Daniela as runner up 2, Ezekiel as runner up 3, and Joe Christopher as runner up 4. But if I run this code now, it will show from the fifth person. It will show undefined, 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 undefined. Let me just run it for us to see. Yeah, so undefined is the runner up, and the reason for this is because, of course, we just have 5 values here, but even out of those 5 values, we are only logging out 4. And but here we are saying that we want to log out till 10. So that's why we are having undefined here. Now, if we said something like names of winners and runner-up dot length, it's going to always stop at the last person. So if we clear it now, you see that it says Divine is the winner, Udo is the second, is the first, runner-up number one, this is the runner-up number two, and so on and so forth, right? So if you need to intentionally skip maybe the first value in the array, you can actually do this, right? If it fits your purpose, right? But if you're not doing this, and if you want to log out everybody on your array, right? Then you have to start from the index of zero, right? So if you do that, right, of course, we now have that everybody is a runner up. You can so if you want to convert this to a number, you could say maybe const runner up equals to I plus 1. So you just say um runner up there. So if we do that, we clear it because I don't divine cannot be runner up number 0, right? So if you do that, you now have that everything is normalized. So divine is runner up number 1, Udo is runner up number 2, and the rest, and so forth. Okay. Uh, is it confusing? Is it confusing? Is there anybody that doesn't understand what is going on? Anybody? All of us are following, right? Okay, so Gift says she doesn't understand, right? Gift, where did you miss out from? Okay, because of my voice. Wow. Um, I'm not sure. My voice, others are saying it's from your end that they can hear me clearly. Can you hear me clearly now? Can you hear me clearly now? Gift. Hello? Yeah. So, gift is I don't really think it's from my end because you're the only person, complaining about it. I believe others can hear me clearly. Is there any other person that can hear me clearly? Gift, try to check the volume, right? Try to check the volume of your PC. And of course, use an earpiece if you're on your laptop. Yes, that's another thing. My voice might not be too loud. If you're listening to me directly from your speaker, because some laptops don't come with very loud speakers. That is by the way, right? You could also, yeah, so that's the problem. You're using your laptop, right? Your laptop speaker loud, might not be loud. So it's not really my fault, or it's not really from my end. You need an earpiece because every other person is hearing me clearly. Your laptop speaker probably is not a loud type, right? And even if you increase the volume to the end, you might not still hear me clearly. Okay, sorry. This is that's by the way. Let's continue, right? Um, we can also write this same thing. Silas, we are not in number method. We are talking about the for loop now already. We've talked about arrays, right? How to add, remove, and everything from an array. We are talking about for loop now, how to use for loop to iterate over an array, and how to use for loops in general, right? So we've talked about this already. Let's see how we can use a while loop to write this same thing, right? Sorry, someone said I should be commenting this code and I'm still deleting them. I'm sorry, I'm so used to deleting rather than commenting. So let me write a simple while loop that should print from number 1 to 10. So first, a while loop just accepts one argument. You see that a for loop accepts three arguments here, which is the the start, the step, and a bit the stop and the step, right? But while just only accepts one argument, right? And then that while argument there is where you want it to stop actually. So if you want your start and your step, you declare those ones. You declare the start outside. So if I could say let I equals to 0, then I would now say while um I is less than 10, right? That we want to console the log, want to console the log I. But after console the logging I, you have to come back and say I plus plus there so that it will add 1 to this value. Okay, so if we do that and we run the code, we still have printed 0 to 9 successfully, right? Or we say we can make it 1 to 10 if we add 1 to each number, right? So we can make it 1 to 10, right? Now, this is the equivalent of writing this in your for loop. Of course, if this is the same thing as writing for let I equals to 0, I should be less than 10 and I plus plus. Then you console dot log your I. It's still basically the same thing. It's going to print 1 0 to 9. If you want to increase it, you say I plus 1. That's going to give you 1 to 10, right? So this is very um the very same, right? But um I'll give an example, right? An example of where you might want to use a while loop. Let's take, for example, I have console.log even, oh, sorry. We say even, or let's say, yeah, even numbers, right? And I want it to log out, but I want the number of even numbers to be printed out here should to be 10. So I could say I want 10 even numbers, right? Now, while if I'm using while now, I to generate 10 even numbers, right? If I use 4, remember that 4 has where I want it to end, right? So it is always going to run. I don't now in this case where I just need 10 even numbers, right? I'm generating random numbers and I'm not I don't okay. Let me do it with a for loop first for us to understand what I'm trying to say. Um for let I equals to 0, I should be less than even numbers dot length, right? And then I plus plus. Of course, you could just say, oh, even maybe when even number dot length is less than 10, right? It will still work. But in that case, you don't need this start and you don't need this step, right? But if you did something like this and then you said um maths, okay, you just say num should be equals to math.floor, math.random, um, math.random, maybe times 100, right? No, let me limit it. Let me say times, maybe times 20. No, times 10. Let me reduce this to 5 even numbers, right? And say if this is even, then console.log, no, even numbers dot push. I want to push that number. Okay, now I'll explain what I've written so far. What I've written so far is saying uh loop. Well, okay, let me just give this a particular value. Let's say I want this to run 20 times, right? Only I want this to run 10 times, right? And then this 10 times it should um it should give me even numbers, right? And if it gives me an odd number, I'll just continue running it. If it gives me an even number, I'll add it to the array. Let's see. Uh, sorry. Let me log out. Let me log out even numbers, right? If you notice, now it just gives me one. Okay, 7 and 7 are not even numbers. So if this is equals to 0, then that should be an even number. So if I run it now, you see 644, 6868. This one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So which means, okay, like let's take for example, in this iteration, it produced 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 even numbers, which means it produced 6 odd numbers, right? This time, how many did it produce? It produced 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It produced 6 even numbers and it produced 4 odd numbers, right? But you see that it's going to be it's going to be um quite stressful to make it produce at least 10 even numbers at the end of the day, because there are even scenarios you can just like now it's just 2 times that it was able to produce even numbers. The eighth time it was able to produce only odd numbers 8 times. Then only twice was it able to produce even numbers. But if you wanted to now say, okay, you want the even numbers, you want it that unless the length of even numbers is 10, you can say, yeah, if even numbers dot length, um, if even numbers dot length is, so if you say, is not equal to 10, let's see. So now it produces 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now the for loop has produced the number 1 to 10, right? Like sorry, it has produced even 6 even numbers. But here is the catch. This I of 0 is useless here. This I is useless here because this is only what you're looking at. You're not even considering the I. You're not even using the I anywhere in what you've written. So in this case, right, what you rather want to use is a while loop rather than a for loop. So the while loop now you would then write it as this. So I'll just comment this, right? So this is how you would write it, right? Let me bring this down here. This is how you want to write it. you'd say you say while, and then you say while um even numbers dot length is not equals to 10, right? It's not equals to 10. Then I'll just copy this logic because I don't want to repeat myself. Just copy that logic and paste here and remove the comments. So while the even number dot length is not equals to 10, keep adding even numbers to this array, right? Once we do that, um, we run this code. It will always give us 10 even numbers. Now, even if this while runs 50 times, right, to produce 10 even numbers, it will run that 50 times. That's why we are having this here, or that's why we are having this results here, right? Now, in this kind of iteration, or in this kind of loop, we are not looking at the number of times it has to run. We are looking at a condition that is to be met before that loop stops running. So once it gives us 10 even numbers, it will break out of that loop and then it will stop running. Okay. So I don't know. Is there anybody that understood that? Is there anybody that understood what I just explained? Anybody? Well, if you didn't understand it, you would have to watch the video again. When you watch it again, you would definitely understand um how it works, right? Sorry, how did this even run? Sure. So, see, it's always going to give me 10 even numbers. Always going to give me 10 even numbers because, and I don't need an iteration here and a step and all the stuff. I just need a condition that has to be met before the loop stops running, right? So we will actually look into do while loop and objects in our next class because it's almost time to end the class already. So we wouldn't be looking at those in this class. But all the same, the next class will be a continuation of this particular one, right? Thank you very much, guys, for coming out to today's class. For people that don't understand the class today, we watch the video and I'm sure you would understand it. Also, um, drop your questions on the Discord if you have any. Right. Thank you very much, and that will be all from me for now. Bye bye.